that Community Matters sent us regarding the result of the interviews and also what they had, their summary. It included every answer provided, by the various interviews, both with city commissioners and with planning commissioners. This is just not planning commission, it's city. And then basically their summary of how to coalesce the answers into certain responses. But what we're going to go through tonight is also as a PowerPoint. We have a worksheet that's been provided to you, and we're going to ask you to fill out that worksheet as we go along and turn it in at the end of the meeting. Okay. And there's simple answers on the worksheet. But then that will also be used as preparation for the joint meeting at the end of the month with Barb Cole, and I forgot who the other person's going to be coming with her. I think Mike Davenport. But anyhow, the PowerPoint that's up on the screens right now is, the basic question that we've had is creating more housing choices. And those are different properties around, although I don't recognize one or two of them, but those are different properties around Goodland. But, go to the next slide, Josh. Why do we want to do this? And this is kind of good both for yourselves, and we'll also present this at the City Commission next week. Why do we look at this? Why update your land use regulations? Better regulations will help attract the land uses that we all want for the city of Goodland. They are our first choice economic development tool. Appropriate regulations preserve property values. Mm-hmm. That's probably most important for a lot of different homeowners. Yeah. They want to preserve the value of what they have. Land use regulations function as a set of tools, and that's really what they are. They're tools that shape the places we live, work, and play. And they also land use regulations help preserve valued characteristics of a place or your sense of place. Goodland, when you drive around Goodland, it's different than other communities in either western Kansas or eastern Colorado. Just like you go to other communities and you kind of recognize them when you first enter their towns too. From the different interviews, examples that we had of why update, there was a basic general response that accessory dwelling units are okay. There is the need for housing that's one level for the elder population or the older population. Apartment buildings up to 4 stories would be okay. Tiny homes, although as it gets later in the PowerPoint, it's more talking about how do you define that? What's that definition? And another thing that came from quite a bit of the interviews was that it could also help us have less yard to take care of, which we have big properties and a lot of space to maintain. Sometimes that works out well, and sometimes that doesn't. So now the findings that Barb put in this PowerPoint, the commissioners generally agreed that more housing units are necessary to accommodate economic growth. If we're going to have a couple different plants come in, or if Goodland Tech takes off, if Schooler is adding a few people, we're going to need some additional housing units. There's also a general sense that Goodland needs different types of housing at different prices. Rental housing is needed. Some housing may be needed quickly. A few people stated by the spring of 2024. That more depends on a couple of the projects coming to fruition. And the commissioners generally support accessory dwelling units, apartments, and modular or manufactured homes. Now, we'll see, when the rubber meets the asphalt, if that's actually the case or not. So, Zach, why don't you take it off from here?
What kind of housing do the commissioners wish to encourage in the city? There hasn't been much change of the housing stock since 1997. The graph on the top left there shows in the last big boom of houses that were put in was, which I believe was the 70s, correct? I can read it from here.
Yeah, the 70s and early 80s.
And then the average building permit issued is well below the state average, which basically that's just saying people aren't building. And then there's a variation of cost, obviously, because most of them are higher end custom homes. So those building permits are gonna cost more than just your average house that's getting put up.
And she took an example from each of the 3 decades. On 2021, 2 different building permits, 2011, 1 building permit. In 2001, 2002 were more expensive building permits, but there was only 2 building, as far as whole house building permits.
And then we are getting to our worksheet that we were provided with. There are 7 questions and no wrong answers. There are photos provided along with each of these questions, along these slides that we will go through, kind of give you different ideas of what you think may work and what you think may not work. And then the results of the worksheet will be used to inform the January 29th joint work session with you guys as well as the city commissioners.
So the PowerPoint goes through each of these questions. So what we'll do is we'll go through the PowerPoint, and if you have any questions or if you want to just have a general discussion, and then we'll allow you a short time period to check off the boxes basically on what you'd like to fill out. So go ahead, Josh, to the next thing. Question number 1 is, what type of housing is needed in Goodland? Now, this isn't intended to be a just check one box.
Right. Yeah.
It's for multiple. And as you can see on there, there's examples, some from Goodland, some from other communities in Kansas. Whether it's single family or, it's tiny homes is in the middle row on the left is a picture from McPherson Housing Coalition that's built a little set of tiny homes for transitional housing. In the very middle picture, that's a picture of a townhome complex in Manhattan that was built about 10 years ago. Obviously, the middle picture on the right, or the middle row picture on the right, is building here on Main Street. And then in the bottom, it shows again a modular or manufactured home on the left, and then a 6-plex in the middle, and then a tiny home on the right. But it says check the housing types that you believe are appropriate for Goodland, and it has 12 possibles plus 1 other that you could check. So I don't know if you guys have any comments or discussion topics about types of housing.
The place that I'm living in now is a duplex. There's another one pretty similar to it with a little more elevation over on Colorado. J.B. McClure was the one that was responsible for getting those built. But it's been, oh gosh,
Oh, wow.
18 years ago, something like that.
Right.
Yeah. But I can't help but think that there are other people, especially older people, looking for something like that.
Right.
So I'd be in favor of pushing that type of thing if we can. There's a lot of older homes in this town, aren't there?
Well, and that with the one graph saying the last significant increase in the housing stock was in the 70s and 80s.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where a majority of our housing stock is, at least the vast majority of it is older than 40 years old. There's some new homes, but that seems to be the semi-custom homes.
Yeah. Yeah, the latest construction has been like sort of high-end, custom, very custom, versus what Caldwell did in the 70s when he built all that stuff on Arcade and Harrison, and those were more like everyday average family could afford a 3-bedroom, 1-bath, and they were nice houses, and still decent houses, but nobody's built like that in 40 years, 50 years.
Well, it seems all the housing that's been built in the last 2, 3, 4 decades has been one house at a time,
Yeah.
where the buyer is already known.
Yeah.
There hasn't really been any spec housing built,
Right.
or just general housing,
Yeah.
so that there would be a choice of new housing versus already existing housing. Now, some people do rehab into duplexes or to rehab a house. I mean, there's one just south of the high school right now that they went in and just redid the house. But that still doesn't increase the housing stock, and it doesn't.
Yeah.
Well, as you probably are all aware of, Colby just completed 24 new housing units out by the swimming pool out there north of the high school. Our grandson-in-law and his family are living in one of them. Purchased it, of course. Pretty reasonably priced, from what I'm gathering. I don't know all the research behind it or anything, but it seems to be working out pretty well. And I'm thinking that type of thing would be ideal for us here in Goodland.
Yeah.
Do we have available lots?
Yeah, we've talked about that at previous meetings. There's a little section in the northwest corner of town that is plotted, but no streets and infrastructure exist yet, so that's a huge expense.
I know where you're talking about, yeah.
Up there by DeLeo.
Uh-huh.
Well, not far from where you live. The other type of housing that after we spend some time on the East Coast and we come back to Western Kansas just does not exist here is big apartment buildings. We lived in one just outside of Philadelphia that probably had 150 units in it, and they were billed as luxury apartments. And we had a 3-bedroom, 2-bath on the top floor that was fantastic. It was like a whole house inside a building, but we had no exterior maintenance. We went up an elevator and down a hallway that felt like a hotel room, but it opened up into this beautiful home. Had amenities like a pool and a weight room and a clubhouse, and you get outside of the metropolitan cities like Denver and Kansas City, those don't exist in any town in eastern Colorado or western Kansas.
Right.
But
Go ahead.
I was just going to say that's a great way to make use of a small footprint to put a lot of people in, which is why it works well in the cities.
The bad hailstorm we had here, what's it been now? 5 years ago, 6 years ago. We had just returned from a wedding in St. Louis. Pulled the car in the garage, and the hail out of the west strong winds out of the west did a lot of damage. But in a way, it was a blessing in disguise because a lot of places have been, retrofitted or at least repainted.
Yeah.
Our new roofs.
Uh-huh, yeah, new roofs. And, we don't need the hailstorm to happen, but anyway, I think people in Goodland take a lot of pride in their places. At least most of them. But, what are we, of all of those, answering those questions up there, number one, what type of housing is needed in Goodland? I think we do need some single-family homes, reasonably priced. None of this 300,000 type thing. Let's keep it in. I was surprised the realtors that advertised our house on West 8th, I thought had it priced way too high. And I told them. And I said, we're gonna have to come down, we're not gonna sell this thing. And it came down, actually twice, got it sold. We're happy, the new owners are happy.
Yeah.
And whether there's other people wanting to come to town in that capacity, I guess I'm in an age group now where I don't keep up with the middle-aged group as much as I used to. But you're in that group, Matt.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think? Are we
Well, it's
in diversity here?
we do. We need more diversity than we have. I don't want to try to influence you guys on what you want to check in these boxes because I think it's better if we have our own opinions. But, there's a lot on that list that makes sense to me, but not everyone on that list does.
Right.
Back to the point of people want to maintain the value of their property.
Yeah.
And so, there are a few on there that lead me to believe that values could go down a little bit if certain things were allowed. So, I think you need to check what you like on that list. But my check marks I checked a lot of them. I was going to ask, have we looked into what they did in Scott City? They put a little community in with modular homes there, and it was financed by a large farmer down there that's just struggling to find places for his employees to live. I don't know if we've taken any look at that at all, but I was just running through my mind of other communities and what they've done, but we probably ought to figure out, or at least look at that a little bit and
Sure.
see what they did.
Sure. I haven't heard Scott City come up recently, so I'll have to take a look and we'll see what they do.
When Wally mentioned Colby, that sparked it in that I've seen that down there, but I don't know much about it other than they got it done. It's certainly has its place. I mean, it's
Right.
maybe a step above a trailer park or an RV park. But it's new housing and it met a need that a large employer in the community
Sure.
had a big need for. So I just wanted to toss that out.
Well, why don't you go ahead and fill out or check off the boxes under number 1 so we can get through the 7 questions here tonight. Go ahead, Zach, and just start talking about the question number 2 while they finish up question 1 here.
The next question is gonna be, who is in need building new places, putting the houses up, possibly. Students, senior citizens, independent living, so like the duplex kind of thing we're talking about. And then assisted living, kind of topside manner. And then low-income individuals and families, and then other. And then if you have other, please specify what you think it would be.
And this one says only to check 3,
Top 3.
or your top 3. Doesn't mean you won't, your ideas might not limit to 3, but what are the 3 most pressing or most important? Go to the next slide. Josh, I think there's pictures. And this gives examples of senior housing as just kind of a layout, kind of like what Wheat Ridge did. But then Leavenworth, Kansas, which looks very similar to our downtown, as far as downtown apartments on top of the stores. And we do have a few of those. We could have more. An example of affordable housing in Lawrence, Kansas, or actually that looks like about 10 different Kansas communities as far as that type of apartment housing, multifamily housing. And then Omaha, Nebraska gets down to 500 square foot upper level apartments, a little smaller. But that's just examples. I'll show a picture. But with question number 2, it was just pick 3. If you guys are okay with moving ahead, we'll move on to question number 3.
I do have a question. I don't know much about it, but I know they renovated the old central school, not central, the junior high school. Is that being filled, or is there a lot of vacancies in there, or do you know, or?
There's 3 vacant units.
There's 21 units there altogether.
Okay.
At least that's what I was told when Pat and I initially looked. No, they're not full.
Okay. And is that for low income only, or is that
Yeah.
just, is that,
There's
is there a criteria?
It's-
Well, I don't
They,
know what you're.
they got their
describing as low
financing
income,
for
but
low income, but I don't think it's an absolute requirement to be able to move.
Okay.
There's not a lot of amenities. There's no garages or anything like that. So, plenty of parking. And then kept hearing that some lady that was originally from Brewster, in relation to the junior high building there, was gonna build 3 houses on the football practice field west of there, but nothing's happening along that line at all. I don't know. But, Wheat Ridge, this is a little bit of a first-hand information thing, but they seem awfully high-priced. It scared my wife and I away. We'd have only had to have moved about a block and a half. But it scared us. The prices were pretty darn high.
Lots of senior living is expensive.
And there's only 14 people in the units at the big house now.
Oh,
14 people. I'm not sure what the top end is there, but I'm sure it's well above 20. So on this senior citizens assisted living, I don't know. I have a big question mark there. Maybe there's of course, You know, the thing that hurt Wheat Ridge was the new units that went up on North Kansas. Topside.
Oh, yeah.
Mhm. And they're pretty nice. They're not cheap either, but maybe you get what you pay for. I don't know.
Grady, go ahead and pull the mic down just a little bit. I just remember from trying to pick up minutes, and I can't hear your voice sometimes. So.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, senior housing, it's trying to make housing so people can stay in their own homes as long as possible in a comfortable manner until they end up having to go to some other type of housing, some sort of assistance. And lots of families are dealing with that right now, both the senior citizens themselves working with it and the family members trying to assist them to do things. And it's an expensive proposition regarding any assisted living.
Yeah.
I guess the reason for my question was, the way I understood was, you have to you can't make more than X amount of money to live in the houses by the junior high. And I know the ones on Cattle Trail are like that too, so that kind of restricts some people, even though it's nice housing. So I didn't know if that was an issue, or if it's just something I'm hearing. You know, so.
I don't know how full they are, but it seems like we have a lot of low income housing. You've got wherever Grant falls, but then you've got the Cattle Trail duplexes, you've got Sparks and Handy Towers, you've got DeLeo. I mean, there are several options, and like I said, I don't know what their fill rate is, or but it seems like maybe there's a vacancy. It's the moderate income ones. If people can build a house, they probably can build a big custom house. It's the middle of the road where I make too much money to qualify to live in one of these,
Right.
but I don't make enough that I can go build a one-off custom home.
Right.
Right.
That's where I see.
That's where I was.
A
kinda
big
thinking
piece.
too.
And then, then it's like, okay, narrowing it down to 3 is tough because that could fit senior citizens, workers, families. So yeah, I think you got to just prioritize what you think is going to be the right ones. But I'm with you. What you said earlier, Kent. These 3 aren't all that I can see.
Not all, no. Well, and we've had this conversation, City Commission, we've also had it here at the Planning Commission, that housing is meaning something different to people now.
Yeah.
It used to be, I want a house with a yard and everything else,
Right.
and now there's
It's
quite a bit of people, not saying it's the majority, but there's a good segment of the population, especially if they're moving here from another town, and they're going to be here 5-10 years or whatever. They may not want to buy a house.
Right.
So what is the housing that fits them? They still want something nice,
Yeah.
but is that housing, on a multifamily or a townhome or a patio, and in the seniors, well, I don't want to take care of the outside anymore. I want to be in a patio home or a other, and we've had those discussions that housing itself, this town is way predominant single-family housing.
Yes.
But how can we encourage other types to occur?
Yeah.
Doesn't mean that we can demand that something happens, because the market will still demand, and people will do it if they can make money at it. But how do you encourage that, or how do you remove the barriers for other types of housing to occur? And that's where I think part of probably the longer discussions we will have is, what can we do?
Yeah.
And is it appropriate for Goodland to do? That's where the longer conversations will occur.
So I'm cheating and looking ahead a little bit, and I think the next questions get at that. So
Kind
let's
of the
move.
segue into that, yeah,
Yep.
is question number 3, accessory dwelling units and duplexes. And this question check any of the statements below that you can support to create more housing in Goodland. So each of these statements, the first one says reduce lot size and lot width to encourage more duplexes. Because they increased it and it says pre-2001 size to start. When they redid the zoning code in 2001, they actually increased the lot size and the lot width. And so it makes it more difficult to do duplexes. It makes it more difficult to do single family houses in certain areas. Because now duplexes, it's 9,000 square feet minimum. That's huge.
That is
Yeah,
huge, yeah.
that's a lot.
I mean,
They
most,
count garage and all that too, or just?
well, that's just the lot
That's
size.
what the lot size has to
Okay,
be.
okay.
Yeah, but that's huge. I mean, most of the communities I've worked in, it's been a 5,000 square foot minimum for houses. And we have 8,400 square foot minimum. Lot size. I mean, that's quite a bit more than 5,000
Yeah,
square
Yeah,
feet.
for sure.
And this town actually had, it was 7,000 at one time and it was 5,000 at one time. And you can see that in the housing stocks, that there's smaller lots in a number of areas of town.
Yep.
So that's one thing that maybe be a consideration. Do we reduce? That doesn't mean that lot sizes have to be that size. That's just the boundary.
Yeah. If you have 9,000 and want to build, great, do it. But if you have 5, can we allow that?
Right. And then
Yeah.
when we're trying to, if you want to have something built like in Colby or Scott or especially Garden and Dodge, which are taken off, and Liberal, you know, then you can fit more houses on a block. And so that $500,000 worth of infrastructure you have to put in,
Yeah.
instead of 10 or 12 homes, maybe you can get 15 homes in.
Yeah.
Right, right.
Spread that out.
Spread it out more. So that's one of those questions.
Yes.
And then if duplexes, and then number 2, it says if duplexes are already allowed, adding a provision to allow accessory dwelling units has a similar impact. And we had the little presentation on accessory dwelling units, so as far as dwelling units, that can be either a separate building or up and down, you know, whatever way, which is that picture right there provides different examples of how accessory dwelling units can occur. Go back to the previous one, Jim. The third statement says accessory dwelling units should be allowed that are attached to the single family home. Whether that's a good idea or not. We kind of do that already in that our one residential zone allows single family and duplexes. So we don't make a distinction between that. Accessory dwelling unit should be allowed as an accessory structure so long as it's not bigger than the single family home. Accessory dwelling units, including tiny homes, are moved onto a lot but set on a permanent foundation, should be allowed. That's where it's, you know, on a much smaller home, but it's still on the same lot. And then the 6th one is tiny homes, but not on a permanent foundation. That may be a more difficult question. And then an ADU is allowed on the lot if the property owner lives in either the existing single family or the accessory dwelling unit. And not to have start to become a entire rental area. And trying to make sure that there's maintenance of the lot. So those are all the, for question number 3, it's just asking about accessory dwelling units.
You have pictures of tiny homes that can be used.
Examples. You know, the first go through them, Zach, when you have.
The attached ADU, so that's attached to a single family home with a separate entrance, shares a common wall, but that's really it, maybe driveway or parking and stuff like that. Your detached ADU would be a separate building, back of the lot, inside of the lot. Your garage ADU, so you could have a two-story garage and make the upstairs a livable space while the downstairs is still used as garage. Basement ADU full plans, a lot of those have a separate entrance, lockout or something like that, but there are instances where you do share a common entryway and then doors that separate them there. Your tiny home on a foundation, so it's gonna be set just like a normal house would be, modular manufactured home. And your tiny house on wheels, obviously that explains itself, it's still got the wheels on it, can be moved, so temporary housing, that kind of thing. And then the bottom picture is actually a tiny house community in Durango that was just developed not too long ago. But just to show that it could still look right in an area, opposed to it just, oh, I don't, the sound of it doesn't seem like it would look right.
Well, and that there's a variety.
Yep.
It doesn't
Yeah.
all look like each other,
Yeah.
you know.
So on the tiny houses with wheels, would that be like, would it have permanent, utilities connected to it, or would it be like like RV type?
That would be part of the discussion on allowing it or not allowing it. What you want to do from there.
Cause that would kind of change the definition of what we talked about the last couple of months, right, with the RV park.
Yeah.
What that means.
I think that's a tougher discussion about, how do you, if you allow that, how do you make sure that it doesn't devalue property?
Right.
Or, become an RV park within the.
Yeah, that's probably one of the biggest benefit with the tiny house on wheels is that it can happen quicker than a lot of the other
Yeah,
right.
type things.
Sure.
And then we have 3 mobile home parks currently,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
and a lot of those mobile homes are very old or
Right.
struggling to stay relevant.
Yep.
Right.
That newer tiny homes on wheels could actually, if you sectioned off one of those, and I'm not saying, so I'm just thinking if, the owners of the mobile home parks, there's no idea, plan or anything else regarding it. It's just an idea. If, you could have 5 or 10 tiny house on wheels on a block.
That would be considered a little different than an ADU, wouldn't it?
Yeah,
If you
it
do
would.
that, right? I mean, cause I'm thinking this is on somebody's property and they got, a little pad and hookups so they can hook up a little tiny house. That, to me, that would be different than putting a tiny house on wheels at a mobile home park.
Right.
That would-
Yeah, those are 2 different
Yeah, okay,
scenarios.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah, okay.
And this one is just talking about it in general.
Right, okay, yeah, okay.
Now, this is an example when Barb talked to us on the phone that they went through was in Inglewood. They had a zone district near Swedish Medical Center that was older housing. I mean, that looks almost like a Goodland house. I mean, it's built in the same era, 50s and 70s. And the zone district allowed duplexes, but not accessory dwelling units. Well, what started to happen is people would buy the lot, scrape it, and then put what's in the picture on the right. Now, it doesn't look awful, but it certainly changes the character of the neighborhood. And especially if you get multiples of those on one block, then it starts changing the entire block. So once they explained that to because there was general opposition when they presented the first ordinance to allow accessory dwelling units, they were saying, we don't want this, we don't want this, we don't want this. So it didn't get passed. Then this started to happen. Then they came back a few years later and said, we want it. So it's trying to figure out, okay, the consequences of some of these decisions. What are the real implications? And not to, go too far in assuming this is the end result. So go ahead and check any of those on question number 4. And you can have time also, I'm not trying to hurry everything. We'll have time at the end to finish up no matter what and review your answers, what you want to put. But we also want to get through, at least for the presentation for anybody
Yeah.
watching it online, and to get through it in a timely manner. He gave you the clicker, Zach? Oh, I guess that's question number 3, and there's different answers on question number 4.
4 gets to multifamily, but same kind of deal, what of these concepts could you support?
Right. I guess one of the hardest things for us regarding the multifamily is that we have multifamily districts, but we don't have a lot of multifamily housing within
Yeah.
the areas designated for multifamily district. We have single floor duplexes and triplexes and a couple fourplexes. But
Majority of the structures that are built on those lots are within our home.
Well, our granddaughter has rented a place from Rod Cooper. Used to be Lyle and Marcia Smith's place. Just a block and a half north of 8th on Main. And she was looking for a place that she could have her dog. She wasn't very successful finding any places. But Rod said, you can have a dog here because there's a fairly good sized yard to it.
right.
And so that was an issue for her. And I'm sure there's other people with similar needs. And then one that I think of all the time is, how good are the streets or the roads in an area that we're talking about building or multifamily dwellings? Generally speaking, our roads are pretty good, West 8th Street, but I knew if I lived there long enough, something would happen. Well, it didn't. I lived there 34 years and nothing ever happened on 8th Street, but except they recrowned it a couple of times. But anyway, a lot of conditions and variables here. They allowed the house just west of where I lived for 34 years. Paxton originally built it. Didn't have gutters and downspouts. Why would you build a house without gutters and downspouts? But I don't know. And then the first owners came along and built a 30 by 40 garage in the backyard. That never should have been allowed, I didn't think. Not only because I had to live next door to it, but there's been some goofy things happen in the 34 years I've lived here, 35 almost now. But what can you do? We're looking for consistency, aren't we?
Should be.
Yeah.
The one thing that may be confusing is when it mentions on two of the possibilities, number 2 and number 7, when it says PD, that means planned development.
Mhm.
And that's where you have a subdivision, and usually it's more than one block or whatever. And you'll allow a little bit variance of certain rules because they have a larger piece and it's split up in them. They include a bunch of stuff with it. So in exchange for that, then you allow a couple other things to happen.
One call out I was thinking about on number 7 right there, you know, a planned development zone, including mixed uses. Just thinking about some of the cities we have lived in. When we lived in Greeley, it was set up this way where when there was a new subdivision, typically the entrance to the subdivision would have multifamily, and as you went further in, then it became single family. And I always thought that was a good use of the space because it puts the multifamily right up at the busy intersections where there's a lot of traffic. But once you get past that, then you got into a very quiet neighborhood that was protected from everything else. So, you know, at first thought, I was like, oh, I don't know if I like number 7, but then I think about how it was done well in some cities that I've seen, and it's a pretty good use of the space.
When it allows that transition, you know, and sometimes they do it in 3 levels. They'll have multifamily at the beginning, and then a townhomes or duplexes or triplexes, and then get to the single family residential.
Yeah.
So, and there's lots of different ways that they can do that,
Yeah.
but now these are some examples in the PowerPoint of different multifamily. You have modular apartments, which we've all seen in different cities. You can have shotgun housing, narrow, no halls, but then just line them up, you know. Or you can have the downtown upper floors, different types of things. And what Zach did is, you know, it included the area in the northeast part of town. Basically, that's North Elementary in the corner. In northeast of that, on Arcade and Eustis and I forgot the other street. And Washington, that's what it is. Now, all the areas in red is zone multifamily, or is our R2. But yet there's 2 fourplexes up there, but the rest are all single family, and they're basically the upper middle income type housing. And then on the right is identifying area along 19th that may, you know, if could that turn into multifamily housing? You know, basically with, you know, what the college did with their apartments, they took over part of the hotel.
Yeah.
There could be another area in that could be multifamily, then that's close to the commercial corridor. But those are just examples.
Well, there have been quite a few new places built. One's going up right now. Bryce and Jessica Cole. That's quite a house. I don't think it's in the city limits, is it?
It's not.
Just outside it. And then you've got those places out around the golf course. And, I mean, that's filling a need for, and those are mostly single-family dwellings, most of them. One of them's a retirement place, but, just such a tremendous variety that, I like the way we've kind of kept order, though, in Goodland since I've been here. Colby is so spread out that I don't know how they got those 24 units in there was something else, but I like the way we've kept some order here in Goodland. We have new areas in the northeast, new areas in the northwest. Not much happening in the southwest part of town except junk piles. But we've kept the order pretty well, and I would hope that that's kind of one of our goals in doing this type of thing is keeping some order.
Go ahead, Zach, with question number 5 here.
Manufactured and modular housing units, which
Intermodal, yeah.
thing from what you see shipped in on 2 trucks and put together to shipping container homes, as long as they meet room requirements, meet egress and all that stuff. And then RV housing and trailer housing. Kind of goes over rezoning certain areas, allowing different things, is like our manufactured homes right now, R1 or R2 area, they have to be residential standards. Any other ones would be put into a mobile home park. Those have lot size requirements and stuff, so maybe changing those lots, big small homes such as tiny homes on wheels.
So again, it's saying check the statements below that you can support. Now, obviously, if there would be a change in the code, it would have to go through a process, and it would have to go through approval of both the planning commission and the city commission in any event. So this is really just for the discussion purposes.
It's amazing how people can take an ugly shipping container and make it into something beautiful.
Yeah.
But it can be done.
You know, they have the modular homes on small lots. I think that's, which town was that in?
Where's that, Cheyenne County?
No, the
What?
2 pictures on the bottom on the left
Oh.
side,
Okay,
and also the one in the middle on the bottom was part of the Kit Carson County replacement. I can't remember the exact program.
Well, it's the town of Kit Carson in Cheyenne County.
Okay.
The middle on the left, the Cheyenne County, the 5 new modular homes. And it just allows you to do it quicker in multiples. And then they also replaced with a modular the picture in the middle and how they made it work. We do have modulars in town. We have, you know, a few that have occurred. And I actually visited the modular factory that can provide a home to come here in Nebraska, in Minden, Nebraska. And they took us on a tour, my wife and I had a tour on the facility. We were on the way to somewhere else, and I said, well, I gotta stop here and check this out.
Yeah.
You know, they can certainly do something. But those are different examples, and once, you know, it's on a foundation and you put the skin on it, it's hard to tell whether it's stick-built or modular anymore.
We've talked about this before, and it's called out in that first question, but, you know, you can do some pretty specific things with design standards that keep them from just being a single wide trailer,
Right.
you know, that, yeah, they look just as nice as a stick-built house and probably better built in some cases. So,
Right. Or more consistency
Yeah.
in the building. you
Yeah.
know.
Is the benefit of a modular that it's cheaper as far as purchasing, or is it just,
I don't know. I've seen some that I wouldn't think are any cheaper than a stick-built house. I mean, they can be
No.
extravagant,
really?
but I think that a lot of it is availability. You know, a company in Minden can build you a house versus waiting 2 years for a contractor
I
here.
see. And, yeah, that's something that may be beneficial here, because builders are something that we struggle with out here,
Yeah.
so.
Well, my
I mean,
twin
who's-
brother lives in Minden. 12 years younger, but born on the same day, but we talk all the time. And he said Minden was getting old. And the new housing area is in the western part of Minden, west of the schools and west of one of the new parks. But he said it's just gone over real well. There isn't a particular industry. Well, I'll take that back. East of Minden, 3 miles, they are building houses out there. So that's probably been a catalyst for them. But I'm just thinking, wouldn't it be great if we had something that would offer a catalyst for us here? And wow.
It was interesting when I visited the factory, that it was 13 or 14 months if we would order. That's the time frame. But that was back a year and a half ago. It may have changed by now with the way interest rates have affected housing.
Yeah.
But there's housing needs across multiple states, so it isn't. And it's hard for us the labor and the trades, in order to build, that's where maybe the benefit, like you were pointing out, Grady, for our community, is just trying to get something built.
Right.
Yeah. You know, yeah, the speed of what they could do. I mean, at first you think 13 to 15 months sounds long, but if you start going down the road of a stick-built house, that's pretty fast.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
So that's number 5, and there's
Okay.
longer questions whether to do. And then go ahead to the next one. Zach, trying. Number 6 question is regarding housing affordability. And just some different possibilities to encourage housing. Should the city pursue incentives and funding programs to ensure affordable housing and help defray the cost of renovation? And there's 5 different ones, and you've probably heard of 3 or 4 others that could be possibilities. The only thing we currently do is we have a neighborhood revitalization program that reimburses 90% of your property taxes for 5 years. But that's the only thing at this point. So,
Expand on number 3 for me a little bit. Requiring payments. Who makes the payments, or what are what do you mean by that?
developer makes the payments, but then obviously that would be included in the price of the house. This
Okay.
starts getting into impact fees.
Okay.
We currently don't have that structure, but that was kind of an eye-opener in a couple of communities that went into, is all the different impact fees that
Okay.
it was used. It was a tool used quite a bit. But then that can make housing more expensive. And then how do you track that funding to make sure it goes to a affordable housing?
Yeah.
And then what qualifies as affordable housing? You know,
Right.
I could see something, you know, brought up earlier, the grant apartments, the old junior high school. There could be a similar building to that. In fact, I think it would make it really stand out to have a similar envelope, skin of a multifamily next door to that in the neighboring property. How do you encourage that? You're going to have to, there'll probably have to be something to help get that to be
So that
realistic.
you could, the idea of an impact fee for all construction would go into a fund that would support
Right, support that.
some
type
help
of
for that
build-out.
kind of, okay, that makes sense now.
Or,
But yeah, I can see the administration side of that could be,
yeah, and it could receive a lot of barking about it.
yeah.
But how do you encourage, and then we've had, like I said, we are vast predominant single family.
Mm-hmm.
Multifamily is hard to pencil out. How do you encourage it so that there's some of that available?
Yep. Okay. Just say, not
Batteries
only did he
dead?
get the remote, now he got his chair.
Yeah.
And then question number 7, and this is kind of talking about other things. Concepts to pursue. I want to make sure this isn't. Yeah, that's like the downtown district, which is C2. We really should be used to promote more mixed-use development. You know, there's obviously the possibility for additional apartments along downtown. Need to work on the parking. Parking, Zach and I have been looking at these different, I used to kind of, why parking was such an issue, but now that I keep pondering it, I'm going, it is an issue. Because our current code requires 2 parking spaces for every residence.
Wow.
Off-street parking spaces.
Oh.
You know, we have the widest streets between Kansas City and LA. No, probably not.
Sounds good.
Kansas City and Denver. And yet, we want to make sure there's 2 as if everybody has 2 cars.
Right.
That's the other thing kind of happened is families, because of economics, are going to 1 car or share a car among different sets of family members, that
Right.
type of thing. So is there a need to have 2 off-street parking places for every residence? For the downtown district, do we allow parking to be provided within the district and not necessarily designated for that site?
Yep.
You know, look for grants for renovation type thing. We might also have a suggestion regarding just the name of the district to make it easier for people to understand that's what it's generally there. Instead of C2, which doesn't mean anything to regular people, not bureaucrats like myself and Zach. or land use planners, but just call it a mixed use district rather than just C2 or downtown business or downtown mixed use or something. Another idea is a new zone for publicly owned land. They didn't do it in this zoning code, but it's like City Hall is in C2.
Yeah,
That's not the correct designation
Right.
for,
Chambers Park is in R2.
yeah. Them, I see where you're going. This doesn't make any sense. Yeah,
you know, and it could be the same for the schools, the college,
right.
parks. You know, there should be a public zone.
Yeah.
So that it kind of separates that out. And then the final question is any other changes? And these are some examples. And create a new mixed use zone district to allow for a mix of compatible uses within one zone. And that's talking about residential and commercial, kind of like our downtown area. We talked about the public district. Revised chapter 9, mobile homes and et cetera for temporary housing. And we kind of had that part of that discussion with the whole KOA campground thing and the RV park thing. Adopt rules for new developments that contain a percentage of affordable housing within them. Although that's kind of tough for us right now until we would have significant development to occur. Because having things built one house at a time, you can't require, well, now that you built your house, we need you to build an affordable house next door. You know,
Yeah,
whatever.
right.
That's not gonna work. Adopt an incentive program allowing for more density and other incentives for developments that include affordable housing. And that could be like the Rural Housing Incentive District, upper story program that's provided by Kansas Department of Commerce. And actually several communities are using that RHID program. Or it could involve something like, you know, if we can get the land bank program actually set up. Amend the subdivision regulations to make it a simple administrative process to combine lots so that any structure besides the principal structure is considered accessory to the principal structure. I think whether we have lot splits or lot combining, it should be an easier process than it currently is within the code. Allow people to actually do a process instead of avoiding it.
Yeah.
And then amend or remove the lot split subdivision regulations as the lot sizes in the residential zones are currently too large to make use of this regulation. Because it's very hard right now to split a lot and still meet the lot size requirements of 8,400 square foot per lot. That means you'd have to start with a 17,000 square foot lot.
Yeah.
We don't have many of those. So.
Okay.
And then they have at the end, what changes or additions to the land use regulations will make the biggest impact on providing more housing units. And then a bunch of definitions.
So shall we fill out with our opinions and everything and have it available then for the meeting on the 29th?
What we need you to do is go ahead and fill it out and give it to either Zach or myself. And then we'll send it to community managers, so then they can prepare for the actual meeting.
Oh, okay.
So they can have a summary of everybody's choices for the actual meeting, and then they can present that and be able to set up certain questions for everybody to discuss and see where everybody's at.
You need that tonight, or when do you?
Well, I was thinking tonight, and that's what she was saying to us, to make sure that you guys submit it, but I'll
Yeah.
let you guys have a couple days, and if I can get it before the end of the week.
Okay,
Okay,
fair enough.
that'd be great.
Yeah, that'd be fair enough.
Then we'll work it that way, and that'll still be plenty of time so that they can get.
Okay.
And I'll do the same thing with the city commission next week and let them have a day or two to make sure that they finish. It's just, the problem is, I just want to make sure, please complete and submit it, because then it'll help us have more fruitful discussion.
Yeah. Okay.
Has this brought up any, caused your mind to turn on anything?
Hasn't changed my mind about anything, but gets me excited about moving forward with the plan.
That's exactly where I'm at. I'm excited about it, see what we come up with, and just the, like you mentioned, Colby growing. I mean, I want to see that here in Goodland, and hopefully we can all come to what it is that we want. So yeah.
Yeah.
And I think it's much needed. And one thing I thought about too, as we talked about different houses, as we're getting older, I see a lot of the single homes or single family homes or multifamily homes becoming vacant. So the older people will get, living in whatever kind of apartments or whatever it is. So, the need might not be as much for that, for the apartments or whatever, or duplexes or whatever. It just seeing how the transition works. I'm just thinking of my own self, where I don't see myself living in my house the next 20 years, but my wife probably does, but I don't.
Yeah.
But, I like the simplicity and just the comfort of, okay, I don't gotta deal with all this stuff type
Yeah.
of thing. But that's just the thought I had, so.
All right, let's move on down to our agenda so we can move on with our evening. Next piece is on reports. So Grady, anything to report?
Nothing to report, but I did have a question somebody kind of brought up to me. You know how we have people who want to do like a business in their own home type thing, and they have to get permission and all that, and they go through us, which is all good, well and good. But one question I was brought up was the utilities expenses, because like if somebody has a business, I guess they pay a different rate on utilities. And so their question was, if somebody does a business from their home, does that rate change, and why or why not? Or so.
It's only on the electricity, and it depends.
Okay.
Depends on what you're talking about as far what type of business. So, and I don't know all the rules. I don't have an exact answer right off the top. I don't know if Zach, if you come across that, so.
Well, it's just something we may want to consider when people are asking for permission or something. Is that something we need to be thinking about too in the future? Just putting that out there.
Okay.
That's all.
Is it? Okay. Well, anything to report?
Nope.
I don't have anything specifically either, other than just say thanks for all the work on putting this together. Like I
Yeah.
just said, this is exciting stuff, and I'm happy to see something moving forward. So appreciate what you guys are doing.
Well, and I really didn't have an end in mind. I just knew it needed to have a discussion.
Yeah.
But I'm really starting to see where there are changes that we could do that might have a beneficial effect on certain types of housing. And, and to be able to discuss it, I'm like you, I'm ready for some good discussion to occur and see if there's actions that we can take.
Okay. Ken, anything, Zach?
just a reminder, we will have a zoning variance hearing for the next meeting on January 29th. And
F5.
at 5, and then we'll have a joint meeting at 6.
Okay.
Will that work with
In,
y'all?
in this room?
In this room.
Okay. That works.
Okay.
Do we need to bring our own chair or?
Commissioners are gonna want their, we have to sit over there.
Well, it might be,
Yeah, I'm gonna sit with Zach.
it might be first in time, first in right. You're in the chairs first.
Yeah.
I'm not taking Aaron's chair if he's here. Okay, next thing on the agenda was minutes, and we didn't have them for the last 2 meetings, so they were included in this packet this time. Anybody see any changes or anything, any edits in the minutes?
No.
All right, with that, I move that we adopt the minutes as they are.
Second?
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. All right, minutes are adopted as written. Last thing, is there a motion to adjourn?
Yes.
So moved, I second. All in favor, aye.
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 Opposed, nay. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.